Hello, Keith.
Very good afternoon.
Nice to meet you from Prague, Czech Republic. My name is Jiří Borč, and I would like to welcome my honored guest, Keith Robinson.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
How are you today?
I am good all the time. I ate my dinner very fast, so I might be burping a little bit here and there.
Perfect, perfect. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. And let's get down straight to business. I would like to wish you a nice time, relaxed time, and efficient time in my podcast. Today, we will be speaking about some very interesting things with my friend and colleague Keith. Tell me, what is new in your life recently, in your professional life? What do you do exactly for living, and how are you in your life currently?
I took a great interest in the area of health and wellness from a good few years ago. And what started me on that journey was an issue from a family history perspective. Both my parents died of cancer before the age of 60. And that put me in what I thought to be a high risk category. But the more I learned, the more I realized I am in control of that, not family history. And you can override family history if you have better knowledge, if you have better control of the nutrition that you're going in, if you're not under the same stress levels or you don't have the same diet. And you can alter things based on what might be have been planned out for you from a family history perspective. And then 15 years ago, I was given the secret of how to reverse cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular issues. And of course, Mr. Skeptical wanted to understand that better. So what I did was I had my vascular system analyzed. I was 46 at the time. My cardiovascular age was coming in to be someone of a 40-year-old, 6 years better than my birth certificate. I was happy enough with that idea. But when I followed a particular protocol that I use for a huge amount of people ever since, 90 days later, I had my vascular system analyzed, and I had gone down from a 40-year-old to a 22-year-old. And I said to myself, okay, this is not just stories, this is the real deal. Because 2 months later, I had it checked again, and I had gone down to a teenager. And I realized that this is something that is true, it's possible, and everybody needs to learn what's possible and take control of their own long-term health and wellness. And I have been on a mission ever since to help and educate, support as many people as possible to what is possible so they can do the same thing.
Perfect. Thank you for a nice introduction. And I would like to draw attention of our listeners, and also if somebody is watching our video, there you can see behind Keith a sentence, which is the core of our talk today. And I must admit that I prepared myself a little bit for this interview, and I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions because I'm really interested in this talk. So my first question could be, maybe we could go a little bit deeper into the subject. What is actually NO and nitric oxide, and what is the primary function in the body?
Okay, well, this actually goes back to 1998, which is the Nobel Prize for Medicine. And like that's 25 years ago. What happened was the Nobel Prize for Medicine was handed out to 3 gentlemen for proving that nitric oxide was a signaling molecule in the cardiovascular system. And it was a huge operation for them to actually prove that, because a lot of times when people are manufacturing nitric oxide in their body, so the precursor to nitric oxide is an amino acid called arginine. And we will get arginine from different food sources like meat and shellfish and nuts and chicken. And when that goes into our bloodstream, when the arginine is there, it actually goes to attach itself to the endothelium, which is the one cell thick lining of all our veins and arteries. And there, when arginine parks on the endothelium, we are supposed to manufacture nitric oxide. But most people will only make nitric oxide for between 1 and 3 seconds. So these guys, proving what the whole pathway of nitric oxide and how it benefited the body, it was a massive operation to prove something that was disappeared by the time they were trying to prove it. By the time you draw blood, the nitric oxide was gone. So they did prove it. And what we also know since that is not only is it a signaling molecule in the cardiovascular system, nitric oxide can also be used in the body as a hormone, a neurotransmitter, and an intercellular messenger. So there's a number of functions that's going to benefit our bodies by having nitric oxide production working correctly. Now, the 1 to 3 seconds of nitric oxide production that an average person is going to produce is working on the assumption that you don't have several different blockers to nitric oxide production. One of those blockers is your oxidized LDL cholesterol. It's called myeloperoxidase. And myeloperoxidase can actually inhibit nitric oxide production. But a more important blocker is another one called ADMA, which is short for asymmetric dimethylarginine. And what happens in that situation is, if you have a high level of ADMA, which is what I consider to be the hereditary part of cardiovascular disease, your ADMA parks on your endothelium. Arginine comes in to look for a parking space, and it's like driving around a busy car park looking for a parking space, but the ADMA has all the parking spaces gone. And that's an inhibitor to nitric oxide production. But there was a clinical study done in the University of Hamburg Hospital, and it took 25 years to do the study, and 75 doctors took part in the study, and they proved that if you can get your arginine levels over your ADMA levels by 160 to 1, you override ADMA, you'd park your arginine, and you make nitric oxide. So it's about giving your body enough fuel so it can override blockers, so it can then make plenty of nitric oxide. That's how you avoid and reverse cardiovascular issues. Because we know that using our particular supplement that we use, we know that we can boost up nitric oxide production for up to and beyond 36 hours instead of the 1 to 3 seconds that most people make. And this is how your body starts to even melt plaque that is there and clean itself. And we've watched so many things happen for people. It's mind-blowing. We had a guy in Dublin who was told he needed a triple bypass surgery. And he wasn't enamored about the idea, because that means cranking open the chest and doing this bypass, and it's a lot of recovery time. And a friend of his, actually a work colleague of his, directed him to what we are doing. And he started to follow our protocol. Now, he went quite strong on his supplementation. He fueled his body really well. But he went back 3 months later for what they call a pre-op. So they were going to have a look, scan him again, because they had his previous scans, and then try and organize when they were going to do this bypass and all the rest. So he went down that morning to have the scan. He went up to the cardiologist, and the cardiologist was talking him through what he was planning out in his own mind. And the technician who did the scan that morning came up with a disc and said, well, there's his this morning scan. And he put it into the computer and he looked at it and he said, that's not his. And the technician said, I'll go down and check. And he went down and he came back up again. He says, it is definitely his. And the two of them had a stand-up row in the office because the technician knew it was his, but the cardiologist could not believe it was his because he no longer needed a bypass based on his current situation. So he had fixed his own problem. Well, his body had fixed his problem because he gave it the fuel to fix the problem.
Thank you, Keith. If anybody has any questions, please write down under this video. We will be both very happy to answer all your questions. And now I will do a little bit more personal question for you. I had a coffee with you the other day, virtual coffee, very nice talk. And you mentioned some people that came to you and thanked you for your help. Could you share a little bit of this story, because it was very strong for me?
Yeah, I was asked to meet an 85-year-old gentleman some time back because he was in a bad way. I can actually share his cardiovascular screening on the screen here if you wish, so as we can talk about it.
Yes, please. I will enable it.
Enable sharing. Okay.
Now it's enabled. You can share, Keith.
This is an 85-year-old gentleman, and I did a cardiovascular screening on him before we started the process of helping his body to fix itself. And the device that was used here is called a B-Pro. It's a class 2 medical device that I was trained on, but it's 99.7% as accurate as an invasive procedure to get the same information based on pulse waves. So when I met him first, his blood pressure was 167/95, which is quite a high pressure. And this was even taking loads of medications. 90 days later, that had improved to 131/77. That's a nice drop. Another figure that's important to know is central aortic systolic pressure, which is actually the heart's blood pressure. The blood pressure in the heart at the left ventricle as it's pumping. He was working at a pressure of 162. Now, that doesn't mean a lot to most people, but if you extrapolate the figures here on the average central aortic pressure for the average ages, you would have to bring that all the way down to an average 185-year-old person to work at a pressure of 162. And obviously, that's a catastrophe waiting to happen if you're working at that high of pressure. But within 90 days, he was able to take 40 points of pressure off that and back to 122, which is the average pressure for an 80 to 90-year-old, actually. So he dropped 100 years in his heart pressure. Another figure we can look at here is RAI, which stands for Radial Augmentation Index, and that's like the flexibility of the arteries. So the heart pumps blood, the arteries are supposed to be flexible, but if you have a build up a plaque around the arteries, you're not going to have that flexibility. So he was working at around 107% stiffness when I met him first, and he improved that to 80% stiffness within 90 days. And if you look at the average ages, it's better than a 60 to 70-year-old arterial stiffness to be working at that. And that's the kind of changes that we see on a continuous basis. But that man continued to do well, and I was helping out some of my team on a stand at a health show, and I saw this lady walking towards me, and she came up to me. She says, "Do you recognize me?" And I said, "Yes, because I'm good with faces. I'm just bad with names." and I said, "How's your dad doing?" And she says, "That's the reason I came over. I saw you from the other side of the room." She says, "I felt I needed to come over and talk to you." And she says, "Because he is doing really, really well." And she said, "I know he would not be alive only for you." And there's something about the feel-good factor when you know you have positively impacted somebody's life. And they're the kind of things that we see all the time. But it's lovely to have the actual data in front of somebody to show them. And I've gone through this with medical professionals, with surgeons, and when they look at it, they sort of scratch their head because it's alien to them as to being able to achieve this. Because the thinking is, if somebody has high blood pressure, let's get them on a medication to lower down the pressure. But common sense would tell me, why has the body asked the heart to rise in pressure in the first place? And if you solve that problem, you actually solve the problem instead of hiding the symptom. Because if you have the body asking the heart to rise pressure because blood flow is not getting to some part of the body, let's say your liver is not getting blood supply that it requires, and the flow has narrowed because of plaque buildup, the liver is going to be asking for more blood supply. So what's the body going to do? It's going to rise up the heart pressure to try and achieve that. But if you go on medication, the medication doesn't solve the blood flow issue. It tells the heart to lower down in pressure. So what you're doing is you're creating a bigger problem to surface later, even though you can tap yourself on the back saying, yeah, his blood pressure's down. If you have to hide the symptom, you haven't solved any problem. And that's what I love about helping the body to fix its own problems instead of hiding symptoms.
Nicely said. Thank you. I would like to proceed to the next question, which you have answered, by the way.
Okay.
This role of nitric oxide in cardiovascular health and blood vessel function, you have answered that. So let's go to the next question. Immune system. Would you very briefly tell us if this is also connected with the immune system?
Yes, well, we actually use what we call a V3 system, a vital 3 system, because the nutrition in our food is so depleted. We are not supplying the body with the nutrition it requires to perform and recover and replace itself. So we use, as the second part of the V3 system, we use a live raw berry supplement, which is supplying the body with huge amounts of antioxidants. And we're talking about raw berries like acai berry, bilberry, blueberry, goji berry, pomegranate, elderberry, cranberry, all of this in live raw food form, but at a purity level that is probably unheard of because of the testing that is done. And it's tested down to parts per trillion to make sure there is no traces of herbicides, insecticides, GMOs, or heavy metals. So in other words, the purest food you can give your body. Now, when you supply your body with massive amounts of food like the ones I've just mentioned, what you are doing is helping the body to correct and balance its own immune system. Because we don't want an immune system that is so poor that anything that passes the way, you catch it. We don't want an immune system that's too strong, which can turn around and attack yourself. So a lot of health challenges, it's actually your own body attacking you because there's instructions gone wrong, or there's messaging system gone wrong, or there's something gone wrong to cause the body to attack itself. And I have a very good friend who had a condition called multiple sclerosis. And that's where the myelin sheath is getting attacked and it's an immune system gone haywire. And he was on immune suppressants and he was on lots of different medications, but he was still getting worse and worse. He had actually no feeling in the left side of his body at all. He had no feeling in his right hand or right foot. He had lesions on his brain, but he followed the V3 protocol, which again is not just helping the circulatory system, but is balancing the immune system, balancing the pH, which we do with raw greens. But he actually entirely repaired his body because he gave it the fuel to do that. He had no symptoms of his MS within 1 year. And he was steadily improving all the way from about even month 2 onwards. He was improving. Now, if you feeling gone in your body, you have nerve issue. Nitric oxide helps to reconnect nerves. Mm-hmm. So he got all the feeling back, and obviously still has it. I think that's 10 years ago since all that happened, or maybe a little bit longer. But he's in very good order all the time. So that was the second part of the V3 system, is the raw berries, and I always explain to people in the line of nutrition, we are like a photocopier. And if you use a photocopier, and you most people have, if you get a brand new photocopier that's clean, and you put in a clean sheet of paper and press copy, it comes out perfectly clean. If you get a photocopier that is badly maintained, and somebody stuck Tipp-Ex to the glass, and somebody else, there's dust in the mirrors, and you put in a sheet of paper to copy, you'll see all those blemishes on the sheet. We are a photocopier. Unless we are supplying our body with the correct nutrition that is required, we are going to regenerate our cells at a much lesser value. So this is again why it's a V3 system, because the raw greens and the raw berries are supplying the body with the nutrition that's not in our food. And the arginine complexer makes sure that nutrition gets circulated. And that's it's very important. We've seen lots of people with immune issues balancing up. I remember helping a guy actually in Dublin. He had a condition called hepatitis C, and that's a viral issue that attacks the liver, and his liver was actually enlarged and hard. But I got him onto the V3 system, but I wanted him to get in huge amounts of the raw berries, because it's antiviral and antifungal. And he was having a scan on his liver 2 weeks later, and the person doing the scan said, actually, your liver looks normal again. And that was only 2 weeks later. But it was another 4 weeks before he had a blood test, and that blood test gave him the all clear. So I think the power of nutrition is hugely underestimated, and the body has massive capabilities of repairing itself, but we have to supply the fuel.
Yes, not mentioning diseases which I, in my research before this interview, like Alzheimer, Parkinson, and so on. But let's not go deeper into that, because I have one question for you now. What is, have you any question for me, by the way, before I proceed with my with my questions?
No, you're fine. You fire on. I'm perfectly happy to keep going the way you're going.
Yes, perfect. So I have the last question for you before we will go to more informal mode. And this is the new trends in your field. And I will specify the question, just a second. I have written it down. What research is currently being conducted on a nitric oxide, and what are some exciting trends and the discoveries on the horizon?
Well, the last time I checked, there was approximately 200,000 peer-reviewed published medical articles on arginine and nitric oxide. So there is no shortage of information, but it's not been put out there. Because let's face it, if you're in the business of supplying medication to deal with symptoms of a problem, or you have an option of supplying something that fixes the problem, which are you going to promote? From a financial perspective, you're going to push what makes you the most money. So there is no shortage of information. There's no shortage of peer-reviewed published articles. One of the interesting ones I found when I was doing my own bits of research, because I wanted to know how this is so helpful for diabetics. And I found a published medical article which proves that nitric oxide can help the liver to engineer cells to excrete insulin. So here's diabetics having a big problem balancing blood sugars. And if they, well, I know a lot of people don't help themselves because they're giving their body far too much sugars than they should. And I know the food sources are interfered with, and there's extra things being added to it, like high fructose corn syrup and such like. So you have to be aware of those things, and you have to be ahead of the posse. And this is why I've noticed a lot of diabetics having fabulous results with the V3 system. They're getting their blood sugars in order. They're cleaning their system. Sometimes we notice that somebody starts on the V3 system who are a diabetic, their blood sugars actually go up temporarily. And the reason it goes up is because the body's cleansing. So the liver is actually starting to expel sugars. And when the body has finished cleaning, then it comes back down to normal. It's like somebody as well managing. I remember helping a surgeon one day with his own health who had 2 heart attacks before the age of 40. He was a type 2 diabetic. He'd been on medication for 17 years and he had an ulcer on his leg that wasn't healing. So I went through this information with him, and he said, it makes perfect sense. He says, I don't know why we're not taught this. And I said, I can tell you why, because I don't want you to know this. He said, tell me what to do. I guided him exactly what to do, how much of everything to take. And he rang me within a week. He was all excited. He said, my cholesterol has gone up already. Now, for a lot of people, they'd panic if they thought their cholesterol was gone up. But he understood what was happening because I told him beforehand what was going to happen. He got all his bloods checked before he started on the V3 system. And a week later, his cholesterol was gone up, which in his mind, proving to him that his body was already cleaning the plaque in the arteries. And the only place the cleaning can happen is the plaque has to melt back into the bloodstream, and then it's cleaned through the liver and the kidneys and so on. The body's doing its own cleaning house. But while the plaque is melting and while everything's happening, your bloods, if you're taking bloods, they're not going to be correct figures. They will be haywire because the cleansing is happening. So I'm sure there's many other ones, but just that's one that sticks in my head for the minute about the nitric oxide.
And now I'm talking with my honored guest, Keith Robinson, who is sitting in Ireland at this moment. My name is Jiří Borč, sitting in the Czech Republic. This is very international. Tell me, Keith, I would like to ask if anybody would be interested and liked our short talk, how can they proceed with contacting you? Is there any way how to reach you?
Yes, actually, I'm going to change the background here to put my email and phone number here in the back. So there's the number. There's my there's my contact details. Yes. I will also send you. I'll send it to you on LinkedIn. I'll send you my LinkedIn contact and my Facebook contact, so you can put it underneath in the description. So it's very easy for people to contact me through either LinkedIn, Facebook, WhatsApp. I'm also on Signal and Telegram. Or they can email me. It's very easy to connect, and we can have. I like to do a Zoom call with people because every person is different. Every situation is different. And because I've dealt with so many different cases and so many different health challenges and guided so many people through, I have a pretty good idea how much fuel to throw at a problem. And some people are very sensitive and you have to really build them up really slowly. And other people have a major problem, so you have to throw lots of fuel at it as well. So every case is a wee bit different. So I like to have people understand what the problem is, because sometimes they've just been, a label has been put on them saying, oh, well, I've been diagnosed with blah, blah, blah. I tend to put everyone under the one category, which is an imbalance in the body. The label doesn't matter. It's an imbalance. So if you help the body to rebalance, you're solving the problem.
Yeah, this is a nice takeaway message. However, I would like to ask you if you have another takeaway message before we end up this interview. Would you like to share with us a very short takeaway message for everybody?
The takeaway message, I have to say, would be never underestimate the body's capability of repairing itself. It wants to repair itself. It's capable of repairing itself, but you must work with it instead of against it. And I know lots of people believe they can eat what they like, do no exercise, stress to the eyeballs, and think that they're going to survive. It will catch up on you. There are lots of things the body will do for you, but there's a few things you need to do for the body. You need to get adequate rest. You need to get good air quality, good water quality. You need to sleep, as I said, and rest. You avoid as much stress as you can. But nutritionally, you must give the body what it needs to be able to do all that. God didn't make a mistake when he produced, when he made us. We have everything within us.
Thank you very much, Keith, for this interview. I wish you good health, and I wish everybody good health. And thank you for being here with me. Good luck.
You're very welcome.
Usually I would stop this now recording, but I will leave it open. I will just get my coffee because I prepared it over there, but I didn't bring it. Just a sec, 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You've stopped recording or still recording?
Now I'm still recording because this is behind the scenes and this is when the deepest secrets are revealed.
All right, okay.
No, I will tell you, I will stop recording in a while. I will just tell you my feeling.
Yes.
My feeling is very good, and I would like to share this video with as many people as possible, because to help somebody to be healthy is shared with my inner thinking, and I would like to spread it among my business community. What do you think about this idea? Do you agree, or have you anything to share with me about organizational things about this video?
I think the more this information is got out there, the more people can be helped. And because so many people have their blinkers on and they think there is only one direction that one can go for help, it's sad to think that they never get the information of what is possible. And there is a saying, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But if we make sure that the water's there for the horses, it's up to them what they do with that information. Because I've sat down with people and I know that they can seriously be helped, but some of them they think afterwards, or they're talking to somebody else who they perceive to be an expert and saying, oh, don't listen to that, or don't do that. Just go back to the doctor. The doctor knows best. And I mean, you have to look at how did people manage before there was organized medicine, because it's all pharmaceutically driven. If you watched what happened during COVID, that was a controlled effort on people to only allow them to think in one way. It was nearly like brainwashing, and people have to realize that their own immune system is actually far better than anything that could be injected into them. And if you look at the data now, it shows that the people who relied on their immune system are in a far better position now than people who took part in that medical experiment. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. And you have to listen to your gut instinct as to who you believe.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Mm-hmm. Just a second. One moment.
Yeah.